Greetings, investors. Welcome to Investor's Edge. My name is Gene Melamud. I'm here with my esteemed colleague,
Hunter Burnett.
And we are really excited to be here with you during Investors Literacy Month. We're going to have a conversation about planning. We're going to have a conversation about investment strategies and how all that fits together, and we hope that helps you. But before we get to that, I just wanted to give you an example of planning, an everyday example of planning that I hope you can relate to. So I went to the gym this morning.
Good for you.
I went to the gym this morning, and I go to the gym this morning with my lovely daughter with a program. We have a list of things that we're going to do. We're going to the gym to improve certain muscle groups to help us with our golf game. So we have a plan. And so we have a group of exercises that we do, and we move, we time everything and so forth. And then I looked around a little bit. And I saw a couple of guys, they did this exercise, that exercise, they had a conversation, they sat around, had a glass of water, they talked, and then they did a couple of other things. They're just kind of jumping around. They had no real plan of why they were in the gym. And it just struck me, why are you there? What are you trying to improve? What's the goal of this? You're going to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning, by the way.
Boy.
You're going to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to do a couple of random things and have a conversation. You might as well stay in bed. There was another gentleman there who was actually a retiree. He must have been at least in his 70s. I say that just because he had gray hair. And he was there with a list. So he was doing very specific work. It looked like he was focused on mobility, but he was looking for specific exercises to produce a specific result for him. Love that, because I think that goes back to investment planning, because there's so much temptation. You're like in a candy store. All these things that you could do, all these things that you could buy. And my friend said that there's this thing, that there's this investment. Oh, and I read in the newspaper or in this research periodical that talked about this company, it's the greatest thing ever. So it's so easy to get off the path. I think before we start talking about investments and the different investment strategy, it's so important to have a plan.
That's right.
You are so great about goal planning and sending out a questionnaire to clients to try to get their picture. Can you talk a little bit about what is it that we do for customers and what is it that you put together that kind of keeps them accountable, kind of keeps them on that yellow brick road?
Yeah, absolutely. When you were telling me all those stories of the people in the gym today with no plans, no lists, it kind of made me think of Planet Fitness commercial, everyone doing weird exercises on the treadmills, on the ellipticals, all those random things that they just went to go to the gym. That's it. No goal in mind. Well, when you start actually planning, a lot of things change. You start to realize what components go into a plan. So in the case of the gym, you realize how much weight you're going to put on the rack, or so what the dumbbells you're going to pick up are. In this case, your planning begins with a budget, in my eyes. That's the first main component. You need to know what you're spending and how much you're making each month. From there, you're going to have to track your budget. And that would be similar to going to the gym and figuring out how many reps you're doing, how many sets you're completing. Just staying in line. Having a plan in place gets you one step closer to achieving the goals that you set forth. So at the gym, when you were there with your daughter this morning, I imagine the goal was something along the lines of get my heart rate elevated to X amount of beats per minute, so on and so forth. And did that allow you, were you able to achieve that?
Absolutely. Because we got our heart rate to a certain level, we did the mobility exercises that help us with our golf swing, and on the days that we don't work out, when we go to the golf range, for instance, to hit some balls, I feel it. I feel like there is a little bit more power. I feel like my swing is a little bit more relaxed, and I feel more confident in striking the ball. So I feel like I'm accountable to myself for, okay, what are the results of what I'm doing?
Exactly.
Am I making progress? Am I getting better? And I love that about investment planning.
Exactly.
Do you have a roadmap? Are you accountable to somebody for this roadmap? Is your progress measurable?
That's right.
Are you moving towards your target? Because it's so easy to get distracted. It's like, when I go to Costco with my daughter also, it's one of my favorite places to shop. I go there with a list because I'm so easily distracted. Oh, this is on sale. And if you go there hungry, forget about it.
$1.50 hot dog.
Right? You're going to spend way more money, especially when those all these stations for tasting, and then you're tempted to go ahead and buy a sample.
Gets me every time.
make a list, have goals, stick to the list, have somebody that you're accountable to, and move forward. These are all objective conversations.
And bounce ideas off of each other. Have that person you can just speak about whatever it may be to them, and they'll be able to give you feedback one way or the other.
What we're getting as a, because when our customers go online and play with the goal planning that we set up for them, we get feedback. Oh, our customer said that this particular site is their favorite. They labeled it as their favorite. So when they go to the play zone, they're able to stress test their plan. Well, what if I spend more? Well, what if I spend less? And what's cool about this whole thing for us is that we can have an objective conversation with a client about what they're thinking about, whether it's financially reasonable for them or whether it causes them to fall off the path and lower their chances of successful retirement and increase the risk of them spending their money before they die. One of the biggest risks for all customers, I'm going to run out of money before I die and have to go beg groceries someplace. Not awful.
It's a terrible feeling.
Right. So what is it that we can control, reasonably control, to kind of reduce stress level and anxiety about it? Develop a discipline, develop reasonable goals, be accountable, have a way of monitoring where you could go in there and stress test it. All of these things we're going to talk to you more about, because especially this year, when we expect for the markets to get more volatile, remember, we're in the middle of an election year. In addition to an election year, there's all kinds of geopolitical stuff going on around the world. And in addition to that, there's talk about whether the economy is too hot or too cold. How fast is the Fed going to lower the interest rates or not? And every time Mr. Powell talks, Mr. Powell, Chairman of Federal Reserve, the market seems to hiccup. The market seems to have a much larger reaction to Mr. Powell's conversation than to that of some of the president-elects.
That's right. It's like a seesaw when the president-elects are talking. You have two kids on it, same weight, not really moving. Then when Powell talks, seesaw moves a lot, one way or the other. That's what happens with the market.
I think it's fortunate that his press conference is normally after the market closes.
That's right.
Right, because when he gives the testimony, you could see how the market moves and reacts to every word. There are people who are actually experts who try to interpret every word of Fed speak. Because I have to tell you, when Alan Greenspan was a chairman of Federal Reserve, I actually went and listened to one of his presentations. I understood very little. He said a lot of words, but I had a very difficult time following him. And in fact, he was interviewed about that. He was interviewed and said, Mr. Greenspan, the interviewer said to him, how is it that you're saying all this different information and it's so difficult to interpret? All these financial experts come in to try to interpret what you're saying, and some of them have a difference of opinion. So how is it that you do it? He goes, years of practice. It's Fed speak. So on the interest rates, I wanted to tell you, now that we're done talking about how important it is to have a plan, your investment strategy should fit into your plan, okay? And so Hunter and I are going to have a brief conversation about how we start talking about risk, how we start talking about investment planning. And the first thing that we can talk about today that we couldn't talk about 3 or 4 years ago is that cash is not trash.
That's right.
And I like to use U.S. Treasuries to give you a feel for where the rates are likely to go, right? Because that way it's not my opinion. U.S. Treasury market is one of the largest markets in the world, one of the largest and most liquid. It's a multi-trillion-dollar market. Who are the players in that market? Foreign governments, municipalities, large endowment funds, banks,
That's right.
insurance companies. These are smart institutional investors, wouldn't you say? We think so. So my opinion compared to what these guys are doing with their money is irrelevant, right? I'm just pointing out what's going on. So if a 1-year Treasury, I looked at the 1-year Treasury before I went in to do this taping, is 5.2% this morning, today. And a 10-year Treasury is at 4.5%. What's it tell you? Why would institutions want to get less rate, 4.5%, for a 10-year investment than a 1-year investment, right? Especially using what some of my senior customers tell me, Gene, we don't buy green bananas. We might not make it to maturity. So if a 1-year is paying 5.2, why would you buy a 10-year at 4.5? because maybe they're nervous about rates going down. Maybe 4.5 is as good as it gets, like that movie with Jack Nicholson, and they're locking it in, right? So who am I to say what the rates are going to do when you have large institutional investors that are voting with their dollars?
Follow the money.
Follow the money. So is it possible that fixed income, which hurt you, it behaved like stocks during 22, right?
That's right.
It seemed like a balanced portfolio. There were articles in newspapers. Oh, balanced portfolio, 60-40 allocation, obsolete. There's no point to be diversified, right? Because bonds were going down almost as quickly as stocks. When the rates started to go up in 22, bonds were going down as quickly as stocks. Lo and behold, the market got a whiff of the fact that at some point the rates may stabilize or go down, and starting October of last year, the market started to rise. Could the notion that the rates might be stabilizing or going down have contributed to that? It could. It could. Because now every time we get an inflationary number and the whole debate starts up again, maybe higher for longer. If the cost of money persists higher for longer, it could have a negative impact on the books of companies, affect their earnings, stocks may go down, and you start to wobble. And so our goal today is to tell you, it is our impression by looking at the yield curve on 1-year to 10-year Treasury that the interest rates over the next 10 years are not likely to go up significantly. They're likely to be flat, and the trajectories possibly go down. Now, I think the debate over how fast that might happen is an interesting conversation over a drink, but I think that it's entirely possible that the fixed income allocation of your diversified portfolio may be a source of total return and maybe a source of stability in the next year or two, especially as we approach volatile markets when people get passionate about their presidential candidates as we get closer to November. Look, we have a lot more to say. This is a really exciting time, the Financial Literacy Month. We're so happy that you spent some time with us. We've covered a lot of ground. We're going to come back to you. We're going to provide more content, and we'll elaborate on some of these things that we talked about today. But we hope that what we talked about today is helpful. We hope that you tune in to our videos. Cheers and happy investing.
After a month of March Madness, thanks for taking some time to learn about some financial literacy during the month of April.